For most of us, it is polite to greet someone with a smile and a handshake upon meeting them. But how would you react if you were to reach out your hand and the other person didn't reach out in unison? Is that disrespectful? Unprofessional? Would you be offended? Our cultures each have different norms that are governed by our body language, perceptions, and it governs communication as a whole. Today I would like to share with you in what ways Judaism affects communication in relationships, the workplace, and society. So would it be professional to not shake your hand upon meeting you? Is it disrespectful for me not to shake your hand, or should I disrespect my beliefs by shaking your hand? Should I start introducing myself with my religion? It is a Jewish custom to not shake hands upon meeting someone, and they also believe that all the body language within communication should be modest and proper. And when thinking about this, it makes me realize that you can literally judge someone before meeting them and then upon meeting them in just how they greet you. So I thought that was very interesting in just going by body language, how much it can govern your communication. So let's talk about the next step. Relationships. They're not just spaces. Love is based off background, commitment, education, and all of those things go into romantic love. The Jewish culture believes that physical touch only causes confusion and limits self-control, and true love should be based off all things spiritual, intellectual, and emotional, not physical. Though this is something that we'd all like to believe that our love is based off of, the physicality is very evident in our culture, because just imagine just meeting a friend and kissing them on the cheek, like that's not allowed, or giving hugs, things like that. That's not a proper meeting in the Jewish culture. And as for relationships in our culture, much of it revolves around physicality. All of our media, much of everything in magazines, you walk around on the street, people are holding hands. That is just not how the Jewish culture portrays themselves. So I thought that was very interesting just right there to see how in ways we interact that is frowned upon in another culture. It's also a law that once a young woman starts menstruating, they are to have no contact whatsoever with a man. This is very interesting to me because I went to public school, and once you got your period, you were considered a woman. So in this aspect, the Jewish people almost take her off the market, rather where I come from, having your period is like, okay, now I'm ready to date kind of thing. So I found that very interesting in that aspect. Our gender roles really match up. The women are expected to be the caregivers, take care of the children, take care of the home. Not saying that is correct and that it is not sexist, but our gender roles seem to match up in that aspect. And then the women are seen as separate but equals, and they actually govern all things physical in the relationship after marriage. So the marital sex is all up to the woman. If they don't find it suitable, then it's not done. And I think that's a very interesting concept when it comes to our media right now, and how consent is a large thing in our media at this point. The Jewish culture also, men and women aren't allowed to interact in public situations. So if you go into a Jewish community, you're going to see the women walking on one side of the street and the men walking on the other. We treat each other a lot based on our community and our social norms, and that really governs how we interact. But a lot of the way we interact is based on our beliefs, our religion, our morals, and a large part of the Jewish religion is their diet. It's called the kosher diet. So they can't eat much of fish, they can't eat milk and meat from animals that chew their cud or have split hooves. They can't eat birds of prey. And the kosher law prohibits eating any blood of animals and eating anything not prepared under the kosher law. Also, the Jewish day of worship is called the Sabbath, and that's observed from Friday night all the way until Saturday night. And in this time, the Jewish people aren't allowed to drive cars, aren't allowed to cook, use electricity, or touch money, which I found to be very interesting. So you almost just live a simple day, no electricity, no light, no, touching money, all of that. And I thought that was a really cool thing to learn about that. And another large part about the culture is their marriage. There's this video on orthodoxjew.com that has a Jewish wedding ceremony, and it's very cool. They step on glass to represent the destruction of the temple, and everyone cheers, and it's just the language they use is very interesting, and very, very different than our traditional wedding ceremony, so I would check that out. Though we know our perceptual tendencies can be contradictory and that our past contributes to how we perceive things today, a lot of things go back, at least I see in my life, that if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. World War II, Hitler and the Nazis, as they traveled across Europe, set up concentration camps, over 20,000 of them across Europe. And I have some pictures from History.com that depict the tragedy known as the Holocaust. So here I just have some bunks from Auschwitz that all of the Jews were forced to sleep in. A picture of the people who had to endure this. Also the gas chamber that they were all forced in, and then here's a crematory where the bodies were burned after being gassed. During this time, the non-Jewish children were taught not to talk to the Jewish children. They were taught how to be prejudiced towards all Jews, how to distinguish who is a Jew, and also how to communicate with a Jew, which I found very interesting, that you almost have to have a different type of communication to even talk to someone. And this discrimination towards Jews is called anti-Semitism, and it was not just in Europe. It stemmed all the way to America, where though we were fighting in World War II, we didn't welcome the Jewish people in with open arms. We had a lot of economic depression, and it wasn't just a belief among the public. Our key government officials did not want to bring in the Jewish refugees. And in the communities in America, or even over in Europe as well, many Jewish people gave up their identification to prevent prosecution and discrimination. But through that, they just found a wholesome community within themselves, which I thought was awesome. The Jewish people believe that the good of the group is much more important than the good of the individual, which I think we all should start to practice, and that would make more of a humble lifestyle for all of us. They believe that you should work to live, not live to work, which in our culture is almost, I seem to think that's the exact opposite. We're working to get all these material things, when in the Jewish culture, having less is more. So I think we could really learn from that. And touching on communication with that is just the difference of where you come from. I can't imagine two men sitting down and one talking about the simple life they live and the other talking about their boat. It's just kind of interesting if you put it in real life scenario. And I believe that it is the life in your years that really, really governs your life, and I think that's much of what the Jewish people kind of stand for in a summed up way. And our judgment and stereotypes are a huge downfall to our world, and I think that we need to start valuing our differences rather than picking out the diversity in our world. And after illustrating how Judaism affects communication, and you realize how relevant all the different aspects of life are to communication. Our beliefs and our experience shape how we communicate, and just as Judaism affects communication in relationships, the workplace, and society, other religions and other cultures do that as well. And my hope for you listening is to keep in mind that we're all different, and that's why we do things differently, and it's okay to be